The NFL draft and Auburn football and their presence in it, or maybe lack thereof. We're going to talk about it here on this live stream. Our takeaways, our reactions to it, probably talking a lot about the good thing of Roger McCreary, but what happened to everybody else that was likely supposed to go in the draft for Auburn football. We'll talk about all that live here on E2C Network Live, and we thank you for joining us here. Whether you're watching live or you're watching on the replay, we appreciate you hanging out with us to spend just even a small amount of time with us, talk about what we love about being an Auburn Tiger. As I said on this live stream, that's what our main discussion point will be. But obviously, my commentary will be at front and foremost here. But we want to hear from you, whether you're watching live or on the live stream. What do you have to say about what we're talking about here? So don't be afraid to comment, drop questions as we go throughout the stream this afternoon or evening, whatever you're watching this, especially if you're watching on the replay. Obviously, a not super productive draft thus far for the Auburn Tigers. Just a little bit of a kind of forewarning. The draft isn't officially done as of yet. In fact, I've got it kind of pulled off over here to the side just in case something else were to happen, because I didn't want to miss out on anything. But as of this moment, the Auburn Tigers only have one draftee, that being Roger McCreary, and with several others thought they might be able to get drafted. And that has not been the case, with only, as of this moment, 11 picks left to go. Now, sometimes it can be a good thing for them not to get drafted this far back in the draft and just take a free agency, but we'll get into some of that in a little bit. Anyway, as we get started tonight, a lot of you know the drill. Some of you are already doing it. Make sure you post where you're watching from in the comments right now. City, state, international with a War Eagle. Want to know who's here hanging out with us. And we're going to get out of here just about in time for the baseball game. For those of you that want to tune into that, that's why we're dropping this just at the tail end of the draft, as opposed to waiting till it's done, because I know a lot of you want to watch that tonight. By the way, wasn't that fun last night? It was fun for a little bit till the seventh inning. Anyway, we're not on a baseball stream. That's Monday night if you want to discuss that here. So a lot of you already check it in. Make sure you hit the like button too if you enjoy this type of content, even on social media as well if you're watching there. We got Thomas checking in. Good to see you. And Neil says, I'm always amazed at players that declare early for the NFL only to see their stock fall. Well, yeah, it's obviously, and this can be our starting point for our discussion. I think people ask a lot of questions retroactively. What were you thinking? And there is a lot of that can probably be addressed and spoken about in the case of, we're talking about Auburn players, that type of thing. We don't have all the information. I know that's cliche. I use it a lot here, but it's really the truth. We don't have all the information that they're working with. Sometimes decisions are made for things other than because they think they're going to be a steal in the draft. So I don't know. We'll talk a little bit more in detail about that. What I do want to start off with, though, on this stream, I think obviously the prevailing thought for this draft for Auburn football is not a good one, right? It is not one that is steeped in a lot of positivity. And I think we can spend a lot of time in that and should to some degree. But I want us to start off with celebrating the thing that happened in this draft that is absolutely good for Auburn. And that's Roger McCreary, as expected, going very highly in the NFL draft. The third pick, I think it was the third pick. Yes, third pick in the second round. So the 35th pick overall to the Tennessee Titans. Now, depending on how you look at things, that was a little bit of a disappointment too. But I'm happy to see him being represented or him representing us in the NFL draft in such a high position. I have put out a video kind of detailing my thoughts about that a little bit more extensively. We'll talk about some of that here, but I would suggest if you haven't, please go check that out and leave your comments on my comments there. I would love to hear your commentary on top of that. But I would love to poll the room a little bit. If you could comment now, what did you think about the Roger McCreary draft spot for him? Is that higher or is that lower than you thought he might be? And I think the majority of Auburn fans, if we were to put out an actual poll on social media, you would see the majority of them saying, yes, that was a lot lower than I anticipated it being. And I would say it wasn't a lot lower. It was lower than I had hoped for him. Now, circle back to Roger McCreary for a little bit. I do think all year long. Most people thought he was going to go in the first round. I think his year proved that he could make a case to be in the top 20. But his performance or measurables, we'll call it, in NFL combines, pro days, what have you, are reportedly what kind of gave him a little bit of knock in his stock. Regardless, though, being taken very highly in the second round, a lot of people these days, they basically look at it as a failure if you didn't make it in the first round. That's not really truly the case. Well, making the NFL at all, even on the free agency level, is huge. But the fact that he was taken so highly in the second round shows you really what teams thought of him. And the fact that Tennessee jumped up so quick to get, I shouldn't say jumped up because I'm not sure that they traded actually to get him. But the fact they took him there's a lot of people that really wanted him. There were just things that they needed to address more in the first round of the NFL draft. And that's the thing. A lot of times you can be the best at your position, but if there are other needs out there, if they don't need a quarterback, they're not going to take a quarterback. That's why this quarterback draft was so unimpressive. I know there's a lot of other things that we could talk about in that for. Kyron, good to see you. Thomas, really happy for Roger. I think he was first round worthy, but I'm not upset with the number he was picked. And I don't think Roger is as well. I think Roger had probably made peace with the fact that based off of combine stuff, postseason type of analysis, workouts and stuff, things were not trending in the direction for him to go mid or even late in the first round. There was still an outside chance. And you can see how close he was. If the Tennessee Titans are somehow taking a draft pick in, the 27, 28, 29, 30 position, maybe they take Roger again at that point. So really, it's just a matter of happenstance that he doesn't get taken in the first round. So it should not be in any way looked as a bad thing, but I can get the disappointment in it. So I want to spend just a little bit of time talking about that. And again, I would stress, if you haven't, go check out that video because I do detail a little bit about what his outlook looks like on the Tennessee Titans. I think you're going to be seeing Roger a lot. I don't think they picked him up if they don't plan on using him. And I'm not talking necessarily starter, but I am talking you're going to see a lot of Roger. I have, for the longest time, the Tennessee Titans, I really didn't latch on to them at all when they moved up from Houston because I was a Rams fan back then, the greatest show on turf. And, the Tennessee Titans and the St. Louis at the time Rams Super Bowl was the big thing back then. So I kind of had a little bit of animosity towards the Titans back then, but they are kind of one of the South teams. So you would think that there'd be a lot of draw towards that. And well, you got a little bit of a reason now too, if you're an Auburn fan, maybe for another reason as well. Neil with a great question. How many Auburn players declared for I don't have the exact number, but I can kind of riff off some of them here for you. So we've got obviously Roger, we've got Zakoby, McClain, and Smoke Money. More on those guys in just a second. In fact, I need to kind of peek back down here and make sure we didn't have either of those two. And I'm sure you guys will be the ones that update me if something does go down. I do not see them going just yet, and we have seven picks to go. It does not look good. So those three were the ones expected to go. Brodarius Ham, Bydarius Knighton. Oh gosh, there's like 4 others. Basically, I think there was about 9. If I'm looking in my mind's eye right now, really trying to reach in there and figure out exactly who all they were. Demetrius Robertson. There was an outside chance that somebody thought he might get there. I didn't really see it. Yeah, if you guys can think of any others, talk about, bring them up in here. So Neil, I want to talk about Malik, and obviously because we talked about it a lot on the Wednesday night show, but let's get to the other Auburn guys here in a second. So what I'd like to ask you guys now, what do you make of Smoke Monday and Zakoby McClain? There's that one dude in the comment section that always like, say it right. I can never remember if it's Zakoby or Zakoby. I say Zakoby because that's just what rolls off the tongue with me. Are you surprised, or how about this? Yes or no? Did you think that they should have gotten drafted in the draft at all? Yes or no? personally, for me, good to see you, Wild Jumper. Thanks for tuning in. I think, yes, that Smoke was worthy of getting drafted, but I think I understand him more why he's maybe not going to be drafted, because of his propensity to take shots at certain players and get himself into trouble, which is what the NFL is really harping on, the whole safety thing. I think he kind of showed himself, unfortunately, more likely to get his team in some trouble. So that's probably the stick on him. I just love a player that wants to be out there and knock some heads off. I wish it was still kind of that way. And I think someone brought this up on our Wednesday night live streams. In a different era, Smoke Monday's taken, mid-round at least, because they just love his ability to smack people around and love getting in there. Neil does not think, he's not surprised. He thinks they both left. Is that for both of them, Neil? Do you think they both left early, or is it one more than the other? How do you feel about that? Because to me, I think if you're going to ask me about that, Zakoby probably was fine to leave. I'm having a harder time, other than he may be a little undersized at his position, coming up with a reason why he did not get drafted. Smoke, I can make that leap, right? I can make that assumption. But the other one, I'm having a harder time making peace with that overall. 6 picks to go, or actually, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Technically, it is 7. I miscounted a little bit, so still 7. Let's see. They both left too early. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I would say that their decisions in hindsight obviously lend to that, right? It looks like they left too early. Again, we don't know what the reasons were. I think with some of the stuff that went on in the offseason, you can obviously see there was a little bit of discontent in certain areas, and it was probably a good thing for both parties to move on, especially if there's not a lot of willingness to get in line, if that's a nice way of putting it. I don't know. It could be, it could not be. I could be stepping out of line saying that, but that's kind of how I feel about that. Is there anybody from Auburn that you thought should have gotten drafted that we haven't talked about? And lifted off some name by Darius Knighton. Rodarius Ham is somebody that might have gotten in there. Maybe. Demetrius Robertson, I saw some articles kind of pushing him out there saying, hey, listen, this guy at least might get looked at a little bit because of his speed alone. I don't think he showed enough personally this season to get him a lot of attention in the draft, but that's a guy as well to kind of keep in mind. I should have had that. I had a list, but you know what? Actually, I do have the list down here. I think I do. I thought I did. Maybe I don't. I once had a list kind of written out of all the guys, so I knew who to pay attention for, and it's gone now. Either way, if there's anybody else that you expected to get drafted, let me know. I'd like to also ask you guys this question. Is this draft, in your mind, a failure about what you expected, a success? I don't think there's too many people that are going to say that this was a success overall. And of course, the title of this live stream is, how did it go? How did Auburn fare? And, you've got the fans, they're not even going to watch this. They're just going to see the title. I'll tell you how they did. Awful. That's sure. Okay. And so from a certain point of view, yes. I think with the expectations that 3 would get drafted, if you look at that alone, that can lead towards it being a bit of a disappointment. If you also utilize Roger outside of the context of what had been happening postseason for him and combines and stuff, him falling into the second round, you could look at that as a bit of a disappointment. But I really think with the uncertainty of Smoke, with Zakoby, not Zakoby, I think that's how you say it, not getting drafted, to me, it's kind of about the same. It's not really a disappointment. It's not really a huge success outside of Rogers getting picked very highly. So yeah. Let's see. Neil, I got my setup a little different today, guys, so it's a little bit throwing me off if you can't tell. Try new things all the time. My NFL team drafted very well. From an AU standpoint, no. Awful. Yeah, I think from a perception standpoint, when you look at how Auburn fares in the NFL draft, it doesn't look good for you to only have one draft, especially when there's teams that aren't in your conference and your position with your resources and your standpoint, not having more success in terms of getting players drafted. Now, here's the other way to think about that. It's just the draft. I know that sounds like, okay, what are you getting at? But they got to get on the field. They got to perform. And 9 times out of 10, if you get out on that field and show you can play, it doesn't really matter if you got drafted or not, you will play. It's happened more times than not. Here's what's in Roger's favor. I think he went into a good situation. I think the Tennessee Titans, based on what I've looked at, make a lot of sense for him. There is a history, especially lately, of Auburn defensive backs doing very well in the NFL, even if they're not starting right away and having longer careers. So I think that he's going to be set up for success. So if we ask this same question, let's say 10 years down the road, if Roger McCreary is a starter in the league, and even if he's not a star, but he's one of those solid guys that anybody would like to have on their team. I like, think about D Ford, not the British lady, but D Ford, the defensive end. I wouldn't, from my standpoint, as an amateur NFL fan, wouldn't categorize him as a star, but he is one of the bigger names out there. Like you say, D Ford in the NFL, it doesn't take long for people to get there. If Roger is at that point 10 years down the road, I think you look back on this draft, even without some players getting drafted, only 5 picks left. Then you look back on this draft and you're like, you know what? It didn't look good at the time, but we've got a name there that's representing us as successful. And we're not even counting the free agents who may win jobs. With Darius Slayton, I can't remember if he got drafted. I don't think he did. But he's made a name for himself at wide receiver with the New York Giants, if he's still there. But you can tell how tuned into the NFL I am. Really, look, I follow the NFL to follow my Auburn guys, and that's about it at this point. I enjoy football. I will watch the playoffs. I will watch the Super Bowl. I will watch the draft. And I'll tune in on the weekends when I can, because I'd spend all my day keyed into college football in the fall. In my opinion, Neil says, the draft is meaningless. I can think of many players not drafted at the top that go on to have amazing careers. Mr. 199 himself, Tom Brady. Great point. It's kind of the same thing. And I know you say this type of thing, and then there's certain people that see this and just either where you in the comment section, in your person, or by themselves, that they just put their whole livestock into rankings, into drafts and things like that. But they're really, in the grand scheme, meaningless. You have to go out there and play, and you will earn the money and the notoriety if you go out and do those things. Roger's one of those guys that I think that they're going to find down the road. I wouldn't categorize, a lot of people were categorizing him as a steal. I don't know that it was a steal. I think it was a very smart move by the Titans to wait. I can't remember who else they had drafted before him. I know who they drafted after. We'll talk about that in just a second. But yeah, that Roger's going to have a good career. And I hate it for Zakoby, Smoke Monday as of this point with 5 draft picks left. But it would be really cool. I don't know if it's going to time out just right, but if the draft ends and, the last pick is always like Mr. something award, and if it's an Auburn guy, that'll be kind of cool to talk about. It would be kind of cool. By the way, real random thought about this NFL draft. There's been a lot of punters. Like the first pick in the 6th round, I think, was a punter, or maybe it was the 5th round. I don't know. It was really interesting. Roger was a 3-star coming out of high school. For him to be taken at 32 is fantastic. I remember to this day when Roger walked onto the field and then he got the starting job as a sophomore. I was like, who? And to watch his trajectory has been nothing but amazing. Unbeaten Lake, we will talk about basketball stuff a little bit later. I'm going to be putting out some videos about Broom and stuff like that coming up probably tomorrow, so be looking for that if you can. What I think about Julian Phillips, I think it'll be pretty cool. we'll talk about that more on a different stream. But I know you guys are itching to talk about that. That's a little bit more fun to talk about. If Auburn basketball picking up Janai, excuse me, not Johnny, Janai Barum today, and really filling 2 giant holes left by Walker Kessler and Jabari Smith. Let's see here. What else have we not talked about? Oh, Malik Willis. I listen, there's not a reflection on anybody here or really anybody in particular. I just want everybody to know you can be a fan of Bo Nix and you can be a fan of Malik Willis, and you can cheer for both, and you could wish the best for both, and it doesn't make you any less of an Auburn fan. The amount of division and the amount of people that jumped on Auburn's terrible because they went with Bo Nix over Malik Willis, and now the people that are reverse jumping on the bandwagon, haha, told you in your face that Malik wasn't going to make it. Well, he made it. Not as high as he had hoped, but he made it. Loved the video of him and the emotion showing that he got drafted. I loved basically everything that I've seen from Malik once he left Auburn. The kid had every reason to be mad, to not make the best of his situation, and it happened again to him in the NFL draft. And if there's 2 dangerous dudes, I think, coming out of the draft, and they're not even Auburn players. One of them is a former Auburn player, Malik Willis, but Zakoby Dean, the undersized linebacker out of Georgia, who got drafted way later than he should have. Don't want to mess with those dudes when they get their time in the NFL. You do not want to. You don't want to mess with this. C Hall checking in. What's up, man? Good to see you. Want to know what you have to say about any of these things? Please post them in the comment section right now if you've got any thoughts. We'll be here for just a few more minutes. We're going to get out right around 7 because a lot of the Auburn people here want to watch the baseball game, and that starts very soon here. And the draft. You know what? We might go just a little bit longer just to see if we can see the end of the draft. There are 3 picks now. 1 more just came in. We're going to see if we can get 1 more Auburn guy drafted with 3 picks left. I don't think it's going to happen, though. It is funny watching this. I was trying to time out where I was going to do this stream, and I had planned originally at 4 because I was like, 4 hours, 12 to 4. That's plenty of time for them to get done. 1 hour because they'll be moving fast now. This would have been better served to start at 7. And if we didn't have a baseball game, we would have started at 7 o'clock. Back to my comments about Malik Willis. Very happy for him. We really can't claim this as a victory for Auburn, even though I see some people doing that in fun, and that's cool. Have fun with it. But I think really one thing that I'm happy about is the dude is found a team in the Tennessee Titans as well. And so if you're an Auburn fan that was a Malik guy that was pumping that horn saying we should have got Malik, you've got double reasons to be a Tennessee Titan fan. So I will definitely probably start paying attention a little bit more to the Tennessee Titans now that they have Roger and Malik, because there is still an affinity towards him. So that's definitely a team that I think that I'll start focusing on a little bit more. Get your comments and questions in here. We got a few more minutes left as we kind of wrap up as we get towards the start of the baseball game, and the draft itself wraps up with probably soon here, only 2 picks left, kind of bringing our commentary back full circle. This draft, just initial reactions to it. It's easy to go negative about it. This was a bust for Auburn. This was horrible for Auburn. From perceptions, yes, it doesn't look good. You'll at this point only have 1 person drafted. As every time I say that, I have to look and make sure something hasn't happened. The question now shifts to, what does next year look like? Because what you don't want to happen is this become a trend. You want to have a improvement, and it's not hard for this to be an improvement. I'm probably going to be putting out a video here soon about, the most likely candidates to get drafted next year, as I'm sure every other Auburn media person out there will be doing. They're probably already typing it up right now. But we've got other videos and content to make in that time. So give me a couple of days on that. But that'll be the thing that we turn our eyes towards. Who is the most likely to get drafted next year, and what does that look like for them? There's an opportunity for Coach Harsin with a better than expected year and a successful draft to really get some momentum going for this program, throw that in that a brand new state-of-the-art football development center. We're probably sitting here in a year where we're looking back on this draft with only 2 picks left and only Roger McCreary getting drafted. And we're not really worried about it anymore. Super happy for Roger. I think he had to accept the offer, obviously, but getting drafted by them was a great thing for him. Going to be a great thing for the Titans. I am sad, unless the 2 picks are Zakoby McClain and Smoke Monday that are left of the draft, we are not going to see them get drafted. Thomas, I believe we will send more defensive players next year. The draft, Hall, Leota, Papo, maybe one more. Those are 3 names that I would definitely look at. I would look at offensive linemen as well. I would look defensive. When I was looking at it initially, I saw, I think it was like a group of 6 that I could likely get drafted. And there was probably a group of 3 or 4 that are sleepers. And it depends on what type of year they have. Wooden, possibly Harris. Yes. There defensively, it's going to be a great year for Auburn next year, just with those names, Hall and Leota. Papo, he's got to show that he can stay healthy this entire year. He has got to. But yeah, so now we shift our attention to who will get their free agency contracts. And that's going to, y'all stay tuned tonight. I know baseball's on tonight, but they're going to start rolling in. So what you can really expect from me on this channel is coming up, next on our edited videos that we do a, discussion about Janai Broom, the basketball commit for today, and what that means for the program going forward. Obviously, we'll talk about, we'll wait a few days and see who all gets their contracts and talk about the NFL draft and stuff and stuff like that all in one video. And then we'll do the one about looking forward and most likely to get drafted after that point. I don't think timing it down, we're going to have those last 2 draft picks in before we end our time here, because I would imagine for that last one, they are going to take it down to the wire, make a big production about the last man taken, which they always do, which will be number. So right now you've got with the 40th pick, the Rams, and then the San Francisco 49ers with the 262nd. And then my phone just died, actually. So we won't know it. I could pull it up here, but that'll be a little bit crazy things to do. Zakoby will probably be picked up and used on special. I think there's a large group of guys that are going to get picked up and see time on not just practice squads, but on rosters. There's a large number of them that you're going to see get picked up. Will they last? That's up to them. I think Smoke, if he can show that he can be a little bit more smart with how he hits. Zakoby, if he can show that the size, it's not the size of the dog in the fight. It's the size of the fight in the dog. As he has shown time and time again, being one of the leading tackler one year and one of the leading tacklers the next year, he will prove that he should have gotten drafted, and it was a mistake for teams not to take him. So that's going to wrap up our thoughts here. I hope you guys enjoy the baseball game tonight. Make sure you're subscribed, hit that notification bell if you haven't. Help us out, help us grow our little family within the Auburn family, and check out all the content that we've got coming out for you over the next few days. We'll also have a podcast coming out from our No Huddle guys talking about the NFL draft coming up very soon. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Smash that like button on the way out until we talk to you again.